Thanks, Provost. I'd like to express my sincere disappointment at the proposed amendment to this motion. This amendment risks creating a missed opportunity for elected members from across the Council chambers to submit a reasonable request to the Scottish Government for reassurances on a matter that affects all the residents and people of North Lanarkshire whom we represent. The need.
Thank you, Provost. Colleagues, today the Council reaffirms its recognition of the urgent need for a modern, fit-for-purpose replacement to the existing Women's Hospital in Airdrie. For too long, our communities have relied on a facility that no longer meets the demands of a growing population or the standards of modern healthcare. That is why we fully support the development of a new hospital at West Moffat, a project that represents not just an investment in infrastructure, but an investment in health, dignity and the future of the people we serve. We welcome the Scottish Government's continued commitment to the Moffat.
Thank you, Provost. Just to say, first of all, I thank Councillor Beveridge and Councillor Watson for raising this today and support the motion wholeheartedly. I attended consultations over the years, campaigned along with many others tirelessly to retain our local hospital and in recent years to ensure that it stayed local when it became clear the current site wasn't a viable option. For the local MSP, as Health Secretary for a number of years, and he should know full well the urgency required here.
Sorry, Councillor Costello, point of order. Point of order, please. Provost, just in the interest of transparency and just to make sure that, obviously for members who are voting, the Daily Record has just reported within the last 2 minutes on a speech that Angela Constance has just made to the Scottish Parliament on NHS capital projects. And the Daily Record reporting that a replacement for the Cumberland Monklands Hospital in Lanarkshire has been delayed indefinitely. And that there will...
Councillor Costello, obviously not a point of order, but I think the point made for an interesting summing up from Councillor Beveridge, but obviously Councillor Beveridge remind you, new information being brought into the debate at this point would be prohibited, but I think members heard loud and clear the comments here from Councillor Costello. Councillor Beveridge.
Thanks, Convener. I'm astounded by Councillor Sullivan's statements here that we're trying to stir up things. But at no time have I mentioned in that motion any political statements whatsoever. Indeed, during my wee spiel, I was telling how the Labour Party has let us down and the SNP Party has let us down. Unlike Councillor Sullivan, myself, Councillor DiMaggio, Councillor Coyle and many councillors in here circled the Save the Monklands camp, circled the Monklands Hospital to save the Monklands when Labour was trying to shut it down and the SNP was trying to downgrade it. So I'll not take any lessons from the likes of you about me scaremongering, my friend. I will simply ask you this.
Thank you. And I got a motion from Councillor Duffy, Lawson and Chatbar. The amendment has attracted 24 votes. The motion has attracted 51 votes. The motion is carried. Thank you.
Councillor Lennon, reverting back to the point of order you wish to make.
Provost, thank you. Probably a wee bit late now, but it was to try and save the SNP group and allow them to keep some sort of dignity to themselves, given the fact Angela Constance's comments. I appreciate it's standard course now that the SNP group North Lanarkshire is an embarrassment to the party, but it was just an half chance that you would declare an opportunity for them to save some face. Thank you, Provost.
You got that out quick enough there. Not a point of order, but it's been heard in the chamber. Item 13.
To the bat for right.
Listen Lanarkshire is a community radio station governed by the registered charity Getting Better Together Limited. Therefore, the radio station itself retains political neutrality, and any political views or comments aired as part of political discussion programming or otherwise are not the views of Listen Lanarkshire, nor of Getting Better Together Limited. The station has a set of key commitments found on the Ofcom website, and we adhere to all necessary Ofcom rules. For more information or inquiries, please contact us at radio@shotshealthyliving.com.
This program is a political discussion and commentary show. It contains robust political discussion and strong opinions. Politicians with a sensitive disposition should turn off now. The views expressed by contributors are their own and are given in a personal capacity as residents and individuals. They do not represent the views of any council, Listen, Lanarkshire, or any associated organization. No council resources are used in the production of this program. Contributors who hold elected office are not speaking on behalf of their authority and are participating in a personal political capacity. This is a great show, beautiful show, big beautiful show, so big and so beautiful. These guys are great, not as great as me. Who will they offend this week?
Broadcasting all the way through the Central Belt and keeping you good folk informed of local politics. I'm Greg Lennon, your host, and tonight you may be surprised that the Bellsy Hill bowler himself has took a night off, especially the last episode before we stopped for summer. You couldn't make this up, so I have none other than someone who is windswept and interesting to replace him, and it is my good pal Davy Crichton. Do you notice how I said good pal rather than your elected position?
Elected position always takes secondary.
Yes, always takes.
But I'm just thinking in this weather, Jerry must be like the colour of a plum tomato by now, you know, think.
Oh, he'll definitely be burning somewhere.
I mean, he's difficult shoes to fit. I've just noticed his chair effectively, that it's got two cushions on it just to bring him up to the height of the microphone. I hadn't picked that up before.
Well, the one that always made me laugh is when he showed up his Cuban heels on, but anyway, we'll not get into that. So, David, thank you very much for joining me tonight, and for you good folk at home, Jerry is down south, obviously, dealing with whatever he's dealing with down there, and I hope he's not claiming it as a personal mileage claim when he comes back. Everybody will be eagle-eyed on that one. But I must admit, I'm glad to see you, fella, because it has been some time.
It's nice to be here, sir.
We might see that there's a better chemistry between you and I than the wee Bellsy Hill bowler.
That's without a doubt, surely.
Do you know what I mean? Because
he's too intellectual.
We do just let him hang about with us sometimes.
He just uses two big words, that's all.
Anyway, for those good folk at home who have been staying eagle-eyed and tuned into the show for the last number of weeks, practically from November, you would see on a weekly basis Jerry and I are continuously making public disclaimers that we're not acting in any official capacity, we're not acting as councillors, we're not politicians. It just so happens we know a wee bit about politics, especially in this fair land. So, to give you good folk at home complete and utter disclosure tonight, the reason we were doing that is because one of our ex-colleagues decided that they were putting something in called a Standards Commission complaint against us. And in that, David, it was rather staggering. So this relates to an episode that we published in November. We will make sure that obviously we're advertising that episode. If anybody missed it, you might want to go on and check it out, because it was actually, in my opinion, quite a fair, transparent and balanced opinion of events that unfolded in relation to the Jordan Linden scandal. So many folk will remember on the Tuesday we were waiting in the announcement coming out that Linden's court case would be announced for the following March or whatever it may have been.
Yep.
And in that we decided we were going to have a conversation. So you were on the show, I was on the show, Jerry was on the show, and we also invited our good pal, disabled blind golf champion of Europe, Barry McCluskey.
Yep.
And Barry came along because Barry was a former SNP member. He was mired in all of this as well in relation to having his reputation tarnished and damaged and everything else. And Barry came along because he wanted to speak about his local triumphs, but also in addition to that as well talk about the historic background in relation to the Linden saga. So fast forward November, we are that episode due. Barry, Jerry and I all have frank discussion about our experience, our recollection of events. And remember, that was 3 years previous, so we're all going in memory at that point. Oh, quite a lot has went away and re-familiarised ourselves with loads of email chains and various other things that are in existence. Loads of contemporaneous evidence, that I would call it, David, that exists there with how the SNP group handled those allegations and how it conducted itself, with those people coming forward to ask really, really difficult questions about how the group was actually dealing with the Linden scandal. Because that episode aired, our good friend, Councillor Tracy Carragher, decided, the former leader of the SNP group, that she was going to make a complaint to the Ethical Standards Commissioner. Now, what then happened? I'll let the good people at home draw the conclusion to that, but roughly about 5 days later, there was a Scottish Parliament committee meeting, and at that committee meeting it was called the Housing Planning Committee, and you may have seen us refer to that in a couple of podcast episodes, that basically Fulton McGregor MSP attended. Now, we would ask you good folk to draw your own conclusion and whether or no this looks a wee bit of framing in relation to the complaint that we got. Now, I'm going to post up my own personal social media pages the actual complaint itself, because in that complaint it highlighted Lennon's a bully, he's attacking these women, they're all female councillors, blah blah blah, all this kind of really, really dangerous framing. No taking away for the fact that that was actually an individual who was significantly involved in the process of the complaints being raised against Lyndon. The Breton of the newspaper story in relation to sexual, or at that point alleged sexual assaults, but now proven to be the case of sexual assaults. And it was highlighting the fact that the complaint itself was more focused at me, particularly because of obviously this podcast, Jerry for being the co-host, yourself for your contributions, and poor Barry, who never even said anything. Poor Barry was getting the blame of editing this entire programme.
No, the man can't see properly.
Do you know what I mean? Absolutely bizarre. But anyway, to put it out there in the public record, I do not suggest, do anything in relation to this podcast. It is basically done by a separate couple of people who have absolutely no affiliation to any local authority. They are no elected members, so the code of conduct cannot apply to them. I do not manage the social media channels. I don't have a say in the social media channels. We're quite happy to leave it to somebody else to make all those witty jokes that continuously appear on the podcast, because really in effect I would classify myself as not that funny. So I would rather leave it to somebody else who's
funny in some
more humorous. More humorous, David. So within the complaint I was blamed for everything bar shooting JFK on the grassy knoll. And basically what happened was that complaint came in not only about me, but it came in about you, it came in about poor Barry, and it came in about Jerry. Now, from that point forward, we had to look and say, well, look at this programme. The programme, we're trying to make sure, now we've done, for the very, very beginning of this, a disclaimer. It's usually a verbal disclaimer, but we said all the way right through this, by the way, listen, this is obviously, we can't deny we're elected members. However, it's not about being an elected member, it's just about trying to explain to the good folk at home for educational purposes. This is how decisions are being made. These are the people that are making them. You draw your own conclusion for that. It's entirely up to you, but what we're trying to do is lift the lid on how your local authority is working. I wouldn't say that there's any special treatment in that. We never refer to private confidential documents. Every single thing is available online, so rather than you reading through everything, it's easier for us to just direct you to where it is, and you go away, look at it and make your own mind up for you. We never ever say that we're 100% right. We've made a number of amendments when we've been rang in this programme as well, and said, by the way, last week we gave it a bit of information factually incorrect, we've changed that, here's the new information that we're presenting. So the complaint itself, David, I was massively shocked at the scattergun approach it was taking. Because what happened in that complaint, it was like everything and anything. The kitchen sink was thrown at it, things that are just absolutely completely obscure to things that were there. But there's one point in this, in relation to the disclaimer, that I'll finish off on before I let you in. The disclaimer process, we thought that due to a verbal disclaimer being on every episode since we started nearly 2 years ago in the summer in July, we tried to make sure that everybody was completely aware. We're not acting on behalf of a council, we're not using any council resource, we're not doing anything at all that could remotely be considered as part of a council. The basis of that complaint is we were acting as elected members, so we then had to intensify the level of disclaimer that we were presenting to make sure you good folk at home know for a fact that we're not acting as a councillor. We are entitled to a private life, and in some respects this is where we're kind of going to get into, David, is when does a councillor stop being a councillor? Because the complaint have done one thing for me. It actually highlighted a significant question, and that question is when are we allowed private time? Because ultimately I do this for no money. Jerry does it for no money. There is no sponsorship. We don't get any additional money coming in at the back of it. We've never done it for money.
You promised me £5,000 for the night, though.
Well, don't you worry. Jerry's mileage expenses will definitely cover that. But the point being is the complaint, David. How ridiculous was that complaint? Because it was clearly to shoot down any political debate occurring about London. How desperate are you to try and submit a complaint on that basis? But also in addition to that, well, didn't work, did it? Because ultimately we've been talking about it since November.
No, it's backfired, hasn't it? At the end of the day, you're right, there's so many points about that complaint, is that you're right, this scattergun approach, I think there was it was either 19 or 22 points that was fired into this complaint, and there was timestamps of who said what at what points in the podcast and all this kind of stuff. Even that was wrong. I mean, there was points that Jerry I think was attributed as making, and it was to him. They had levelled the complaint against the four of us on the basis of editing and production, all sorts of stuff. And no offence, Barry will take this in exactly right.
I didn't want to say anybody, but thanks for doing the editing for the last. Thank you.
You're very welcome. If only I had the IT skills.
Everybody sees you as an old guy, and I don't realise how much a technical whiz you are.
That's it. I have enough trouble with my mobile phone, and anybody that knows me will tell you exactly the same. However, but it was just a scattergun basis. You've got to think about the context and the timing as well, though, because not only was it leading up to the kind of court basis of Jordan Linden, it was also around the time of candidacy for Holyrood elections, which Tracy Carragher was going forward for. And it was just it doesn't matter how you dress this up, and it's all on the website, by the way, folks, if anybody's really interested, for cases that were had no outcome. But you can actually see the Standards Commission Scotland's report on how they arrived at their decisions for each of the four of us. But Barry's was amazing. I mean, to level the same complaint to Barry about editing, and I know, as I say, Barry will take this in the right way, the lad's partially blind. You know, you think
it's not partially, he's 99% blind. And
you think, how stupid is that? It's the way that it was framed, it's the timing of it that was there. It was what they either thought was, you know, it was going to be silenced, or some way that debate was going to be started. I don't think there's anybody advising it at all. I think the timestamps, they were absolutely hilarious when you know, when you look back, I'm thinking that's just not my memory of it. But the crucial point, and you're exactly right, and I think it's still worthy of debate, is at what point do you stop becoming a councillor? Because I don't come here as a councillor.
No, not
I really don't. And okay, you've got knowledge, but it's a wee bit like, you know, I don't know, bringing Steve Clark in, let's assume that he's got a bit of football knowledge. But he's not you know, he wouldn't be the Scotland manager when he came in if he was chatting about politics, he was chatting about anything else, but he would have experience and history that he could bring to the table. So at what point does that stop for being a councillor?
The analogy that I made last week when Jerry and I were discussing this, an off-duty police officer or an off-duty fireman, I would imagine a paramedic would definitely be the situation, but again, off-duty fireman, off-duty police officer, is the expectation when they're off-duty, they go to fight fires and they go to fight crime. Is that what they've got today? Because ultimately you can't have somebody, and this is where it becomes interesting, because if that's the case then, and I did the calculations on this, if that is the case, then let's add it up, because if I'm expected to be a councillor 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, somebody owes me over £100,000. so I'm quite happy to write that invoice. I'm quite happy to write that. After tax, whatever's left, I'm quite happy to take away, because I think this is where it's going. If the Ethical Standards Commissioner can't do a ruling, or can't actually have an understanding that when you stop being a councillor and here's when you're being a councillor, there's nothing quasi-judicial about this process of a podcast, then really in effect...
Well, the wording in their manual is that if the public could, I think it is, reasonably perceive you to be working in your official capacity or your councillor capacity. But to me that means that you're talking in a professional way, that you're representing the council, you're at an event,
a public meeting
or a ceremony or something of that ilk, where it's absolutely clear that you're there to represent your ward or the council or both. There's no way three numbnuts sitting around about this table
therapy for us.
talking in general could be seen, in my mind, could be seen as acting as a councillor. I really don't. So I don't get that part. Your reference about the timings and individual, I was really surprised because the Fulton McGregor thing, in relation to
5 days after the complaint was submitted by Carragher, he attends that committee. We posted the video up. We've let people already see it, but people might have looked at it and went a wee bit bizarre why you're posting that up. But the point is, now you can kind of draw reference to it, because McGregor attends that, and he's not the best auditor. He's the worst communicator I think I've ever seen. But the point being is when he's trying to ask the question, he's trying to do it in such a way where, in my opinion, my personal opinion, is it looks as if it's been framed. The complaint that Carragher submitted was being framed. He mentions to the Ethical Standards Commissioner, let me, and this is me paraphrasing here, I can't remember the exact terminology it was used, but let me just say it. Male councillors attacking female councillors, and then basically starts hitting out with, because female councillors have a torrid time at the Scottish Parliament, and then he goes on a bit further, which I thought was a bit dangerous and a bit, what would you say, concerning, that he made comparisons with Joe Cox. And you're looking and you're going, hold on a second here, what kind of framing would that be, where you're trying to take the tragedy that happened to Joe Cox and try to align that with you and I having political opinion, and Jerry and Barry, political opinion on the current leader of the SNP group. The fact that she's a female is irrelevant in my opinion. Totally irrelevant. The fact is she's the leader of the SNP group. Again, the SNP group, after we left, elected her to continue in that role as leader. So they were absolutely endorsing the position for Jordan Linden. So we fast forward, how dare he present that as a Joe Cox issue? Absolutely not. Disgusting.
It was I watched it back. I didn't see it live or anything like that. I watched it back, and it really surprised me that it just seemed out of context. Completely. There was other questions prior to that about the scope and the data and the numbers of how many complaints were coming in and how many were being dealt with, the budgets that was applied, the number of staff, all this kind of stuff. There was nothing really as specific as what about complaints against females. And I thought, okay, that sits apart. I don't know Fulton McGregor from Adam, I'll be perfectly honest, but the question to me just didn't seem to sit in the right context. But it's not until you look at the wider context of now when we became aware, because at that point, of course, we wouldn't be aware.
Well, we weren't aware. We weren't aware. We weren't made aware until the January, I think it was. It was something
middle
like
or end of January,
something like that. And then the Ethical Standards Commissioner sent you that lovely email.
Look back and
that lovely email.
In
mine, she made reference, which is quite really bizarre and surreal. She made reference to what was it? What was the exact wording again? I'm going to post it up on my personal social media pages anyway.
It's on the website. Effectively, there's like 22 pages. I think.
No, but he's already been sanctioned by the Standards Commission, referencing the complaint that Des Murray and others made against me in relation to the Mears stuff. Now, as I said, we boiled that down previously on the show. That came down to an email and a Facebook post. That's ultimately what that came down to, and I received in my opinion, a heavy sanction with a 2-month suspension for that, because there was nothing directing anybody or doing anything to anybody in that.
You've got to look at the cost to the Ethical Standards Commission for investigating that level of complaint, where, let's say it's 20, I think it was 19 or 22 scattergun complaints made randomly against 4 people, one of which struggles to see about editing the show. And that one just blew me away. I thought, how stupid is that? To actually try and level a complaint about editing
towards the issue
a registered blind person.
But they're trying to shut this podcast down. This is the point. They're trying to shut this podcast down because it's imperative that we are no longer talking about what happens in North Lanarkshire. Now, just again as another disclosure, we don't generally talk just about North Lanarkshire. It just so happens that the biggest stories in the country are basically emanating from North Lanarkshire. Jordan Linden scandal, the Mears contract, all these different things. £1.8 billion Mears contract. It was a massive issue, especially the scandal that followed that with KPI reporting. Again, we never created that, we never did that. But that contract for £1.8 billion still went ahead to somebody who was fraudulently obtained KPIs. Bonkers, that's not us.
I mean, some of the show stuff that I've seen that's there, the podcast, is far wider than North Lanarkshire. I mean, to me, because you've had
Brian
election stuff...
Leishman, with the Keir Starmer resignation, we've been actually quite finger on the pulse politically.
I mean, I think you've had lawyers in, you've had politicians in,
senior journalists
in as well. So you've kind of got a broad spectrum. So this is where it really ups me a wee bit, that when I turn up, I don't profess to be the councillor that I might be during the days or when I'm representing people that's there.
Well, there is a councillor, but there is people. But
there was one, and I've got to highlight it, because one of the things that was levelled at me was that I'd used the word nonsense. I jest not, is that I referenced the word
bad and shocking
as being nonsense, and yet that was referenced as being discourteous or disrespectful or whatever else. Anyway, the complaint's been dealt with, the decision's been made, it's been kicked into touch.
So the interesting thing is how that decision to kick it into touch arose, but because this again comes back to a fundamental point that I think. So on the shows, I've already said we have a separate producer. That is what we've got. We can't deny that. And again, Ethical Standards Commissioner, Standards Commission for Scotland, more than welcome to come and speak to these people. It's no us that's doing this. So the bit about this for me was in the complaint, it was misogyny, it was bullying, it was harassment, it was this, that and the next thing, all the way down this big extensive scattergun approach that we actively do. Now, in fairness, we are critical of the Labour group, we're critical of the leader of the council, we're critical of all these different individuals, and again, through political discourse, they're more than welcome to come on this show at any point and say, by the way, I think you're completely wrong and here's why. Again, that invitation is open. They can come on anytime. All you need to do is send a wee email and we're quite happy to accommodate you. We'll make sure that you're treated with respect and dignity all the way through your appearance on this show, like we've done with everybody else. I don't share the same politics with a lot of your guests, but again, you would never know that because we're no nasty people. So the point being is when we get to a stage where the Ethical Standards Commissioner is wiping away absolutely everything, because really in effect it's my experience, that is my experience here. Councillor Carragher had an issue with her employment history, David, right? And again, I find that staggering, because these statements were hers at Hustings in relation to the Uddingston and Bellshill selection process. She made them. I never did that. I just recalled what was said. So I can't be blamed for her saying that she had a lack of work history. I can't be blamed for her saying that she worked in certain places. That's not me. That's not my fault.
There's a motivation, and whether it's just because we were ex-group members, I've no idea whether that's sufficient motivation to be doing this. I mean, it'd be kind of unthinkable, to be honest, if there was further complaints come in on whatever basis from another
I think we're always
SNP
going to be
member.
subject. I don't think it needs necessarily be the SNP. I do think we're always going to be subject to complaint. Because why? Because we're talking about things people don't want us to talk about. And if, again, coming back to it,
but that's not a basis of complaint.
But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You have to quash that debate, because as the way the councils ran and various other things like that, debate is not encouraged, and open discourse isn't discouraged. Openly encouraged is discouraged. And the position is all you need to do is tune into any full council meeting to see that. You get one question, potentially one supplementary, move on. So again, there is no free
comparison, because at that point, was Tracy Carragher still the leader at that point?
She was the leader at that point. So Jordan Linden's court case hadn't came out. It hadn't came out yet. Okay. She appeared as a witness for Linden along with Councillor Fiona Fotheringham, who was the other person, the Wishaw councillor, who's basically there as a witness for Jordan Linden at that criminal trial. Now, but about this is the cynic in me.
That was a dangerous choice, by the way. I'll come back to that.
The cynic in me kind of looked at that episode. So when the complaint came in and we had the opportunity to look at it, and I'm kind of glad that we can tell everybody that's the reason we had to do so many disclosures, and for purposes for tonight, another disclosure, I'm not acting as a councillor. If you, the reasonable listener at home, can't understand that, then I don't know what else to do, because I'm telling you right now, I'm not acting as a councillor tonight. I'm just telling you, flat out, I'm not doing it. I'm here as a private citizen who knows a wee bit about stuff, and I'm only talking about my personal experience of things. So, if we get back to what was submitted, because this is a blinder, by the way, it's a blinder in this. When I was looking at the complaint material, right, so it was on relation to the episode in November. Jordan Linden was announced in the morning that his court case was coming up. It's been scheduled. It's going to be in March,
scheduled
right?
March, that's right.
Scheduled in March. And that led to the discussion between the four of us, and this is everything that's happened, right? I think, and the cynic in me thinks, that was potentially an opportunity to silence us as being misogynistic and bullies and all that kind of. Leave it to the good folk at home to decide what version of events is likely, is the most likely aspect of things. But you imagine if Jordan Linden was found not guilty and there was a complaint being in relation to this show, and our opinions about how that process, it could have vindicated individuals within the SNP group.
The opinions that were expressed on that show from memory, I mean, it's a wee while ago, but the opinions were based on what we lived. It was personal experience as far as I was concerned.
Evidence as well for that.
So we weren't on the basis that we weren't talking, in fact, from memory, I think we were very strict on the basis that we never mentioned or referenced the court case at all, because it was obviously live, it was going to be happening, so that was never a topic of discussion. What we did comment on was the individual personal circumstances and actions that were taken against us at the point of having to leave or be expelled from the SNP group. And as it goes back to that motivation, is the motivation just purely vindictive actions to get back at people that left? Is it, as you say,
well,
there, to
silence? Time she took a complaint against me, she took a complaint, I spoke about this last show as well, she took a complaint against me in 2022, I think about 2023, and it was in relation to Anum Kazir and the NLC 9 workers, and Tracy had presented that I shared private and confidential information, again on the Standards Commission's website, for no progress case. And basically it was all the way right through that she tried to present it as it was private budget information, and that budget information was shared, and lo and behold, not as it's out in the press had already ran with us weeks before, because the unions had made everybody aware of it. So it's got nothing to do with me. But again, Standards Commission called a hearing, and then, by the way, there you go, Standards Commission, there's all the newspaper articles that cite that number, that specific, so it came down to a specific number. That was what it was, and says the only way you could have known that specific number is because of the private and confidential information. No, it wasn't. It was in the press, it was in the Daily Record, it was in the Times. Going to read a paper.
You go back to the kind of that housing committee, I think it was, that Fulton McGregor was on. It was there, and it wasn't all it was about the number of complaints, and it was about how they referenced the complaints and how they managed the data. And I mean, that's what I was listening to anyway, up until the point that Fulton McGregor asked his question. And a lot of that was the nature of the complaints. And I think one of the comments that the Ethical Standards Commissioner made was that we can always see if there are difficulties within a particular council based on the number of complaints that come through.
We're staggering number of complaints.
If you look at the website, it's actually quite frightening, the complaints that come through for North Lanarkshire. But at what point does the Ethical Standards Commissioner, who's a professional individual who looks at this for a living, who's been appointed by the Scottish Government, look at the number of complaints that are coming through from an SNP group in North Lanarkshire that are then kicked into touch and unfounded?
But that's it. We discussed
when do you stop that?
Fiona Higgins, we discussed this way. Again, the weaponisation of the code of conduct. Now let's look at the facts, because no doubt a complaint will come in at the back of this show. But let's look at the facts, right? The episode airs in November, right? Whatever day that is in November, I don't remember off the top of my head. Let's say the beginning of November, right? First week in November. Just for simplicity, for the chronology of this. So, first week in November, episode airs. We speak freely in relation to our experience and recollection of events in North Lanarkshire SNP group. 5 days later, there's a complaint that's submitted. And 5 days or 7 days, there you go, there's a complaint submitted. It was within a short window and that complaint is submitted because political debate and discourse was taking place in relation to members' experience and recollection of events. Now, tell me you're not trying to shut down free speech. Tell me you're not trying to shut down free speech. You know for a fact that that's there. You have an option. You can come on the show and argue your point. You're more than welcome. Come on and take part in that discourse. We will back that up with receipts. We will back your position with receipts, which we've done.
Yeah, I think one of the things that strikes me about this podcast is that yourself and Jerry have a real satirical look at Jim Logue,
what a
council leader, and yet here you are 2 years in, and Jim Logue takes it on the basis that it's given. It was, I mean, if Jim Logue actually
not a bit personal.
No,
not a bit personal.
Well, I'm assuming he's never had a complaint on the basis of you two guys that's there, but and there's somebody that just takes it, recognises it for what it is. It's debate. It's a bit of satirical look. It's backed by fact or experience or history or whatever else that's there. And yet here you've got somebody in Tracy Carragher who has this shotgun approach to take 20 different levels of complaint. Some level that people that didn't even speak the words that they were told. And you think, but there's got to be a motivation. There's got to be some kind of thought process behind that.
Well,
I don't know what that is.
My personal view on that is, in my own personal view, the only thing I can surmise in relation to what that is, it's petty and personal. That's basically it. There's nothing more. Again, I recall being the group secretary of the SNP group, David, when we took over the position. SNP Paul Damasio took over as business manager, Tom Johnston was the leader, and Lyndon was the deputy leader. Carragher came to every single one of the meetings, and there's a wad of recordings that still exist in relation to that. See the amount of audio recordings that existed and things, and it wasn't me that took them, by the way, I'll tell you that right now, but just a plethora of recordings in relation to North Lanarkshire SNP group. The amount of attacks and sustained attacks I took every single week in relation to the minutes. You're talking about business wasn't even spoke about for the first 30 to 40 minutes, because an attack came in about a punctuation error in relation to the minutes, or an attack came in, that wasn't what was agreed, that wasn't what was said. It was broadly, it's business only minutes, so it's broadly speaking. Every single week without fail of being a secretary, there would always be a point, and you're talking about a 2-year period, by the way, 2 years in minutes that nobody ever reads. Nobody ever reads. You get to a position the following week, we agreed the minutes, it's a nod through. But again, that couldn't happen because there had to be this personal attack on me every single week in relation to the minutes.
Well, it's interesting because, as you know, we've been invited. I don't know who else has been invited, but I know a number of people obviously been invited to take part in an SNP investigation into the situation and the management of the Jordan Linden scenario, shall we say, in North Lanarkshire Council. So we've been invited, and we'll go along, and there's a high-ranking barrister that's going to interview us all, and if we want to make submissions and everything else that's there. And that's going to be quite interesting, because I'm guessing that will cover the scope of that investigation is actually quite far, it's further reaching than I thought it would be.
Well, again, Councillor Carragher is still suspended for the SNP group or her handling in relation to the Jordan Linden scandal. She was removed for standing as an MSP, and again, in quite a, what would you say, highly embarrassing way in relation to the SNP, and how they just basically ousted her for her potential list position. And again, there was a snowball's chance in hell of her winning that. She was 8th in the list or something.
Down the list, yeah.
So she was 8th on the list. The God Almighty is ever going to return to that position. So really, in effect, you could have easily left her on that. There wouldn't have been any consequence, but that shows you with John Swinney's embarrassment when it came to the Cameron McManus meeting her, because Conor Gillis showed him the actual text message for Cameron and a corresponding text message for her saying meeting at such a time.
Well, it was an uncomfortable time for them. Definitely an uncomfortable time. Swinney did not enjoy it. Neil Gray, one of the interviews I saw, really did not enjoy it. Two of them
looked as if they were deers in a headlight. But anyway, there was another point in relation to the complaint that I do think we need to briefly cover, because there was a mistake made on this podcast, and basically it came down to the production team, and I'm going to actually invite him in. Do you want to come in, Martin? No, we're getting a no. We're getting a no, David.
He's not.
Listen, you're more than welcome to come in here and explain your actions, fella, because I took the dairy for it. You can come in here and explain.
No, chocolate's not going to cut it.
No. Anyway, he's sitting in there all sheepish and thinking he's hilarious. But again, the point being is there was a screenshot taken in the old SNP WhatsApp, and in that screenshot it just so happened there was 2 telephone numbers attached to it. It was an editorial error. There was no malice in it. Nobody at all was brought to their attention. I didn't bring anybody to its attention during the podcast or anything like that. It was talking about the fact that when the Linden scandal broke, when that story broke in the press, I had published that in the WhatsApp channel and said, by the way, what's the position of, I can't remember exactly the terminology, but basically, what's the position on this? And then I was met with a barrage for Councillor Kirsten Larson, get a life and all this kind of stuff. And you're only asking a simple question: is he going to retain his position or is he going to be suspended? That's basically what is it that's actually happening. And again,
you see that there's absolutely...
Well, here's the bit about it, right? This is how scattergun the complaint was. The complaint that she submitted was all but dismissed because Article 10 rights, I don't know why we've got Article 10 rights, David, because I'm not acting as a councillor, so I don't know how Article 10 rights were put in the reason for protection, but or how it even triggered the code. I think that's a bigger question as well. Why is something I'm doing in my private life, you're doing in your private life, why is that triggering a code?
Well, it's interpretation of the code wordings, isn't it?
It's a light switch, they only flick it on and off when they want it.
Would you reasonably be perceived, I think is the term, yeah.
So basically, in that scattergun approach, right at practically the end of the complaint, as I said again, people can highlight it. If I'm wrong, I'll correct it the next time we're on it after the summer. But basically, in there was, it also showed the private telephone number. This is me personally, by the way, I'm getting the dairy absolutely everything in relation to the complaint, but he also showed the private telephone numbers of 2 councillors, and that caused whatever fear and alarm or whatever it is that it caused. And I'm sitting there going, I never even touched that, my goodness. But anyway, once we looked at it, we seen it, and it was blurred immediately, so we didn't find out about it until, as I said, the January. So for the complaint being in November, and then it was edited immediately to make sure that was fixed.
22.
You, Martin, thank you very much.
He's not happy.
You wronging. But anyway, as I said again, rather bizarre, the scattergun approach to the complaint. But again, what you'll find is a pattern in that scattergun approach, because they've got to get me. They've got to try and do something to get me.
Well, there's still an interest, isn't it? Because you'll know, I mean, just before last weekend, I was contacted by a reporter who was still obviously following the story. This is the reason why I bring it up tonight, because so I read it in the Mail on Saturday. It's still, it's kind of there. I actually get 2 phone calls from ex-SNP colleagues.
Aye.
So whatever discussions have been going on, I don't know, we're obviously not privy to the discussions that's been happening within the SNP group and beyond, from the people that phoned me. And then the day after,
you have significantly embarrassed yourself in relation to your involvement with Jordan Linden, and you think the best course of action is, I'm going to go after the ones that kept raising complaint in relation to Jordan Linden.
I don't understand the rationale. I really don't understand the rationale. I mean, if there's any more kind of complaints on that basis, you've got to think the Ethical Standards Commissioner must be thinking, what are we getting next?
I don't know. I don't know. Again, looking at historical records, the only cases that ever seem to progress is anything at all it's kind of brought forward by an officer of a council. So if it's an officer of a council, it's treated far more seriously. You're questioning their professional integrity.
That was something that committee raised as well, wasn't it? There was an aspect to that, and trying to find the numbers of actual public complaints.
Council spats, or councillor v councillor spats, they seem to kind of just fall by the wayside. However, the issue and the interesting part of it is the complaint was proposed to go to a hearing in relation to the Ethical Standards Commissioner, but it was the Standards Commission for Scotland. It turned around and says it's not in the public interest to progress this because, quite simply, the money and various other things in the public purse.
Well, but if you look at some of the reports that came back, it went further than that, because it said it was highly unlikely, and it was terms like that, highly unlikely, that this even breached or got close to the threshold of discourteous or disrespectful behaviour. And it was about the cost, about taking this forward. But you've got to look at the cost. How much did it cost the Ethical Standards Commissioner
to investigate us?
To investigate 4 people.
For a podcast that's live on air, it's on Spotify, it's on YouTube, It's on Apple Podcast. Anything else that we're missing? Patreon. We're on Patreon. We're on Instagram. We're on Facebook.
I don't know what
we're
that
on
means, but
TikTok.
it's like...
I'm just using it as an opportunity to plug on the social media channels that we've got on.
I'm not
We're also doing T-shirts at the end of the year, by the way. I'm just saying 2 for 1. Anybody wants merch? We're doing merch.
All in XXLs.
Oh my goodness.
I just think I find it bizarre. I really do find it bizarre, and I was honestly I was shocked at the level of the inaccuracy of the complaint that went forward.
Do you think, because I was howling at Jerry Brennan, so it said timestamp 1.11 or whatever it is, you said this, right? And it was in relation to her employment history, Councillor Carragher's employment history, and then the next point was, you said this, something along the lines of stupid people or whatever.
No,
and then
no,
the next
he got one.
No, wait, I tell you, right, because I was absolutely howling at Jerry. And then the next one, it was something else, and he said that it wasn't Jerry Brennan that said any, it was me who said that.
Huh?
And you're looking and you're going, how can he be getting done?
There was one, I can't remember, I mean, I spoke to him just the other day, as we did once the thing came out last week. I was speaking to him, and he said, the best one was, he said, I used the word irrespective. Cause I think you had said something, and he said irrespective, and he moved on to say something else, and that was picked up as condoning, I think, or being complicit in what I'd already been saying. I thought irrespective to me is the total opposite to that, but I might
strange.
be.
The whole process has been very, very strange. But the good thing is, we have now adopted a constant stream of political disclaimers to make sure you good folk at home can't be under any false illusion that when we appear on this podcast and all the social media channels, for what's the point, we're appearing as private residents and citizens. We're not appearing as councillors. You can't phone me up and say, I've got a surgery issue, going to deal with it. That's not going to happen.
You draw the stark difference, because we've been invited, and I don't know who else has been invited, but we've been invited to take part in this SNP investigation into the conduct and handling locally, the Linden scandal. There we're acting as councillors. There, I understand that what I'm given. There, we're getting emails from the barrister to our council basis because it was in a professional capacity. That I can understand. So I will respond as.
Would you like to respond this evening and tell us what you're going to be putting in that?
Oh, there's a lot more.
Is there an exclusive?
How far do you want to go with it? Because
would you like to relive your expulsion for the SNP group?
Well, I'll relive that, because it's like
relive
I would like to relive it, actually.
For a professional individual, would you like?
Well, here's one, because I'll give you.
Would you like to tell the good folk at home
this really is
the
a therapy
standard treatment?
I should be lying on a couch
that evening.
I should be lying on a couch to tell you this stuff. But there's a timeline that I put together of the events that went through. So the 2 occasions where I was threatened with disciplinary procedure, because 1, I sent you an email, and 2, I'd put a Facebook post up saying that there should have been more done by the party and locally and everything else, and effectively I was told, take that down, or you're encroaching the disciplinary. So anyway, so there's 2 of the examples. You draw contrast to the fact of the actual expulsion. Now there's a lengthy part on the expulsion part, because effectively what happened was, and I think you guys have probably covered it anyway, so a few days before, because you were suspended in perpetuity with no actual reason or hearing, that there was a number of us, 6 or 7 of us, said, no, we're also withdrawing ourselves from committee structure, will not be representing the party until this has been resolved. Now, a party leader has up to and including the day, basically, of that full council, as you know, to be able to submit the council papers that say these are the councillors that are sitting on respective committees. We get into the council, and Tracy Carragher presents this nonsense, erroneous document, I think I've called it, in the response back to this barrister chap, where it still has 7 of us on committees, where we so explicitly said we will not be. On top of that, by the way, we all got confirmation from Lorna Finn, the National Secretary of the SNP, to say you're perfectly within your rights to withdraw your involvement in committee structure. So we've got all that, and we go in, the paper's presented, I raised the issue to say, no, sorry, does Councillor Carragher want to take 7 days just to reassess the information that's there and resubmit a more accurate version of it. That was the word. It's on the webcast, go and have a look at it. And all of a sudden all hell broke loose, and the next day I get an email saying, you've been considered for disciplinary with the recommendation of expulsion from the group for bringing the party into disrepute. Now, let's put that in context. We've just lived through the Jordan Linden scandal. We're living that part at that stage. We also had the story that broke in the press a week after Jordan Linden's story broke at the end of July, because I was still down in Devon. The week after that, there's a story broke in the press about another councillor, Alan Stubbs.
Oh, that's right. It's theft.
Alleged theft from his employer.
For Motherwell Police Station.
So I kind of raised that at group and said, because the group rules, remember, the group rules say if you're implicated within a serious matter, it's not that you're convicted or you're charged, that you're doing, if you're implicated. And the rules state that you should be suspended pending investigation.
Yeah.
Neither Linden nor Alan Stubbs, that was shut down, no happening. I make a plea for that document to be changed at full council to give her 7 days, and bang, I'm out the door.
Wow.
So there's a whole series of stuff like that in my response to the barrister and the investigation.
Do you think the counter argument to this is going to be that you're just, what would I say, that basically we're coming at this because these individuals are elected politicians who are female? Do you think that's going to try and be the argument to this?
Oh, it better not be.
I'm just saying,
honestly, it better not be.
Because if you look at the complaint, right, again, these people are in positions of power. If you take Claire Bartley, who was the business manager, you take Kirsten Larson, who was a convener, you take Tracy Carragher, who's
but that's circumstance. That's not because the.
But the point I would make here is, right, because it's an easy out sometimes when a political opponent has been critical of your leadership or something like that. To kind of simplify it to something so basic when really in effect it was your decision making that brought it to that point of disrepute.
You were in the disciplinary stroke expulsion evening where 8 people were
I was held at the door by
so you
by
weren't
the
going to get in.
business manager who was acting like a big bouncer.
I
found it rather bizarre.
But they were trying to discipline, let's say, 7 people plus yourself in one evening.
This is council buildings, by the way. This is everything that's going on in the council group meeting spaces.
Going back to your point there about whether there's a defence that's coming down the line in terms of their investigation to this barrister about females and males, is that you'll recall that one of the things that effectively I was attacked with, if you like, was by a male councillor, Alan Stubbs, in relation to me telling me, about his lawyer and the involvement that he needed to have legal representation.
Alan Stubbs is also the person in my complaint.
Last I looked, he's no female.
Well, Alan Stubbs is a person in my complaint of significant interest. So when I was suspended, Alan Stubbs' involvement in this is quite staggering. I'm not saying it's wrong to have personal relationships in politics or family connections and all these different things. I'm not saying any of that at all, right? But for the good folk at home, I would ask you to draw your conclusion. If you're the godparent of the complainant, if you have got a long historical family connection to the complainant, if it's the complainant and your wife are bridesmaids for each other's weddings, or maids of honour at each other's wedding, you're the godparent of that person's child and everything else, and one of your biggest political foes who keeps raising nasty questions about Jordan Linden, would you try and get them and convince them to make a complaint in relation to that individual? Again, there is a part in the events that seems to be existent within Coatbridge SNP, and I'm sure many of the good listeners tonight would have read stories about individuals in the past. God, there used to be a point every Sunday Herald. There was a story about the SNP in Coatbridge and under Fulton McGregor's leadership. But the point that I'm making here is it's not to try and target. As I said again, I'm not here to cast any viewpoint in relation to Stubbs. But Stubbs that night, when it was my suspension, tried to frame it as bullying. When bullying wasn't mentioned anywhere in the complaint. So the narrative twist, that's what I'm thinking in relation to what their defence is going to be for why they allowed for Jordan Linden to continue within that group after sexual allegations were made in relation to Jordan Linden abusing young men as young as 14 all the way up to 18 years of age. The continuous sort of sexual imagery that was sent to young people and various other things, and all the other stuff that was read out in court. the people decided that Jordan Linden could be retained within the SNP group. He could continue in his position. They also knew about Cameron McManus, so the victim or alleged victim, it was alright for Jordan to be in the same room as the alleged victim.
Well, that's just what I was going to say.
Come to the same meetings as the alleged victim.
Yeah.
But again, the point remains is they can't take accountability for their own actions at any stage, so there has to be a counter-argument. Lennon, Brennan,
there is.
Crichton.
I mean, see, when you look back, because I think at that point, I can't honestly remember the chronologically as to when I became aware that Cameron was one of the alleged victims. I can't remember the date sequence of that. But regardless, I was aware of it after the event, and Tracy Carragher allowed and chaired meetings where Linden was allowed back in. Now, I think from memory, he only came back twice after he had resigned.
Christmas night out.
And it was, there was a Christmas night out, but there was another occasion where there was a vote to be taken about your continued suspension without any information being given.
Well, again,
and lo and behold...
They used the word safeguarding with me, right? And again, I've disclosed it on the show. Safeguarding was, I got asked a direct question. Is Joanne Kelty, at that point, Councillor Joanne Kelty, the rep on SPT? I said, no, it's Adam Smith. So that's what they deemed in that complaint as misogyny, and that's what was happening.
But it's not, is it?
Then became safeguarding.
Aye, but so all you've got there. Do you look back?
You were happy to give me safeguarding because I misidentified the individual. A legitimate thing. I didn't know who the SPT rep was.
Jordan Linden sitting in the room.
For something so simple, and you took great offence to that, that Jordan Linden can sit in a room.
And it was stated by the leader at that point that Jordan would be fully reintroduced to the group after it had all settled down. And there was, I think it was, I don't know, I can't remember whether it was Fiona Fotheringham or Tracy Carragher or someone else that said, we should all be aware of Jordan's mental health and how he's feeling and all this kind of. And I'm thinking, you're aware at that point, she's aware that Cameron McManus, an alleged victim, is sitting in these meetings.
The best one, and I'm no diminishing away for the victims here. My heart still truly goes out to every single individual who was a victim of Jordan Linden, and even to those people who still to come forward, and I hope that someday they find the bravery to do so. But for the theatrical perspective, and this is really one of the critical points, I think, at that full council. You look at Adam Smith and his amendment to the Labour and Cameron's motion.
That was just ill-judged.
And again, you look at that because £10,000 has been taken away. It's a clear motivation. There's no denying that. Anybody at all watching that will come to the same conclusion. But also, in addition to that as well, the Larson contribution to that full council, it still seems to me that none of them believe that Jordan, despite all the evidence that was presented in a court of law, or the victims that came forward, none of them are prepared to accept the fact that he did it.
Or that they could have done something.
They could have done something quite early on.
Early on to either prevent, not whether they can prevent him acting. That's not what I'm saying. Well, you can't influence an individual's behaviour once it's already happened. But there were steps and processes that are given.
He had to remove himself from the Westminster selection process.
Yeah, but there's a whole series of rules to manage this.
But how weird is that, right? Let's just say that your boy, or my boy, right, is in that party in Dundee, and it's one of your kids that's in that toilet, and Jordan imposes himself. He's a big boy. He was a big, heavy set lad. So really, in effect, if he's standing all the time, you nibble in your ear and telling you to pee in the toilet, that's the most disgusting and bizarre thing I think I've ever heard. But yet, when that evidence is getting read out in a court of law, these people are still of the opinion just Jordan. It's just a young person, to quote Kirsten Larson.
It honestly blew me away on the basis that Tracy Carragher and Fiona Fotheringham would actually go as witnesses. Now, the counter-arguments go, we were cited. No, I'm sorry. If you were cited or called, and there's a slight difference in them, is that a defence counsel is not going to call hostile witnesses.
No.
I'm sorry.
No.
At the end of the day, if you'd been called, regardless of whether it's a legal requirement for you to attend, you're only in that position because you're going to be favourable. You're not going to be a hostile witness, so you wouldn't be in that chair. That's not a defence. Do
you think Tracy Carragher comes back after this? Do you think she's electable?
No.
Do you think anybody at all in Coatbridge South, because is it Coatbridge South she is?
Don't know.
Can't remember.
Don't know.
But in Coatbridge anyway, where her ward seat is, I can't understand how anybody, given the fact of the level of publicity surrounded her, the fact that our reputation is absolutely self-imposed and in tatters because of our position in relation.
If you're sitting in the
to Jordan
SNP and you're looking there because you know it's going to come in the paper, you know that you've started an investigation, an official investigation where you've got a top class lawyer, beyond lawyer, top class King's Counsel, barrister, top of his field. So they've gone to that extent. So that's a serious notification of basis. And this isn't just some internal. They've got an independent guy coming in from outside.
I still believe she was advised. See the ill-advised decisions that have been made, in my opinion, unknown the SNP group. Now remember, I was part of that for 5 years, and then there was I think about 9 months or something, I was still a part of it. But come 2022, but the point being is the decisions being made seem to be of external influence. And my thing always was, like I say, see when I look back to our standards complaint against me, and it was the monitoring officer at that point in time whose comment says that this is private and confidential. That monitoring officer knew fine well that wasn't private and confidential information.
Yeah.
And my concern always is who are the people that's advising these individuals to make these very, very...
Well, when we were trying to raise the issue around the Linden scandal, around your suspension, it wasn't a suspension, and we were getting documents and that'll all come out in the investigation as well, the replies from the National Secretary at that point and others.
Hundreds. The amount of audio recordings that exist. The SNP group, see they try to paint this picture. They try to paint this picture of the SNP group somehow being this institution of confidentiality and everything else. It's bizarre. People record people all the time.
You mentioned there that you thought there was external advice given at that time from head office and stuff, but we know that.
But is it head office? I think again, I'm not trying.
I think it's more local.
I think it's more local. I don't think I'm no conspiratorial, but
I don't know that it's HQ because we've got emails which will come out as well on a basis from HQ telling her.
I would love to say Jim Logue, right? It's no Jim Logue, but I would love to say Jim Logue because there'd be a motivation for Jim Logue. You give them bum advice and let them follow through on it. Politically, if they get a win, well, great, because you're taking away a political opponent. Don't get a win, you look like a crackpot, and again, win-win. So there's got to be somebody there pulling the strings, in my opinion, in relation to it. The Adam Smith one in relation to the motion, I think I could categorically highlight where that came from. The great idea to present that motion, because it's a £10,000 leadership enhanced payment for just being the leader.
I'd be surprised if that was Adam.
But there is a motivation in there for a couple of individuals who eye that as the prize. There's certain individuals who do not have any aspiration other than being the leader of the council. Yeah. And in the meantime, they might as well get £10,000 additional payment for it and bump their wages up.
Come back to your point whether Tracy Carragher comes back and others. Is that no? I think the short answer no. Where if you're sitting in the SNP and you're looking at this stuff and you're not looking at stuff that we're going to present to them at that point. Where is the rationale? Why would you bring someone back into the fold that is a risk?
It's Coatbridge SNP. I firmly place everything at Coatbridge SNP because again, if you look at it, all the last, I would say, nearly 10 years.
Well, there's maybe higher up support.
10, 12, 13 years. Well, again, I don't really think so. But potentially no, because obviously, as I say, where was Jamie Hepburn, where was Neil Gray, where was the others in relation to London? Again, nobody was taking any action. Fulton McGregor had Jordan London done, reportedly, a volunteer in his volunteer list to Scottish Parliament, and when the allegations broke and everything else, so he wasn't.
It was difficult. I've got to say there was I had a few supportive phone calls actually for Cllr Adam Smith and Marion Fellows was an MP at that point, and numerous people for the branch who were livid, and so was the Bells Hill branch members, absolutely livid at the way the handling of that, the expulsions particularly, because effectively they lost 8 councillors out their ranks.
Now,
on the basis of what?
I know.
Because
there's just one point I think I need to make. We moved on for Jordan London. The show moved on for Jordan London. We were quite happy to leave everything and move on. That's how we sentenced. We were quite happy to leave everything in the past. We moved on for the SNP group. We will still ridicule the SNP group in relation to the decisions that they're making in the chamber and everything else. But like he says, it's others as well. There isn't fear nor favour in relation to who we're going to discuss. And as I said again, you don't like it, you disagree with it, well, there's always an open chair for you. Come in, have that discussion, have that debate. As I said, Jim's been offered it on countless occasions, even although he's referred to the podcast, which I thought was a great plug one day at Full Council. But again, there is individuals in there that we still have open discourse, open conversation with. I don't think Jim Logue's a bad man. I don't think that for a second.
No, at all.
I disagree with him fundamentally and his politics, but that's healthy. There is nothing right. I'm sure Jim fundamentally disagrees with my opinion, and that is healthy. It doesn't have to become petty. It doesn't have to become personal. I don't take any personal retribution at the fact that I want heads on stakes in relation to how I was treating the SNP group. Absolutely not. Life's too short. The bit for me in all of this is, but again, you made those decisions. We don't want to be talking about you, Tracy. Let me be absolutely abundantly clear about that. You're the person that submitted the complaint, and it just so happens it never progressed, so we are talking about that. So that's the difference.
It's interesting the press pick it up, though. That's the other thing.
Well, I know she was quoted.
Well, that's what I'm saying, because I get 2 phone calls the day before. I get 2 phone calls from, let's just say, ex-SNP colleagues who had already said, now whether it had been discussed at group level or whatever, I'm not entirely sure, but they were aware of the complaint. And they were aware
Did we offer Tracy Carragher? Did we offer Tracy Carragher a spot in the show?
You offer whoever you like it.
Is that what we do? We offer a spot in the show when we come back after the summer break. Let's offer her a spot in the show, and she can come on and explain herself if she's still a councillor at that point.
Well, it'll be I don't know. This investigation is going to happen over the summer. It looks like, from what we're seeing in terms of the timescales. The written submissions and the interviews and all that kind of stuff.
I still think you should have the recall option at a local government level. I still think that should be a thing. You should be able to recall anybody that thought it's broke any sort of political party.
But then you go down that road and you look at spurious complaints the likes of this. At what point do who decides who? Because you need to involve the Ethical Standards Committee, you need to involve investigations and everything else, and now all of a sudden, complaints against 4 different people, all kicked out, all said, nothing to see here, Jack, thanks very much.
How much does that cost to investigate?
Well, that's what I said earlier.
It's reasonable.
How much does that
Absolutely
cost?
Reasonable. Is that good use of public money?
Well, you've got the Ethical Standards Committee, you've got at least, I'm guessing...
All because he did hurty hurts on my fields.
Well, lad...
Do you know what I mean? There wasn't any sort of... I wouldn't turn around and say... I would never be nasty. So the bad about it is again... The point for me in this is and I'll be honest about it, you chose a life in politics. I chose a life in politics. If I do or say something absolutely outlandish and stupid, then I need to expect public commentary on that. Point being is, Carragher has decided that she wanted to be the leader of the group at the most craziest time, because the leader of the council group had to stand down because of sexual allegations made against them for very young men. And by the way, he made that decision on her. He was never moved out the group. This is the point. I think everybody forgets. He wasn't removed from the group.
That's in the
pressure was too much in relation to the press, and he had to decide for himself that he was standing down.
There was no disciplinary action, suspension,
no safeguarding,
no grievance procedure, nothing implemented. So
very strange.
It's more than strange.
Well, again, one final appeal, just to make sure that everybody knows there is no longer any more disclaimer comments for Jerry and I. You'll be glad to hear we don't need to make that joke any longer. But in addition to that as well, this is an open invitation to you, Tracy. We know you're listening this evening. We know you'll be listening intently. There is an empty chair here. You're more than welcome to join us at any point. Please feel free to get in touch and come on and have your say. Perhaps we're wrong. I doubt it. The evidential trail doesn't say that. But again, if that is what you feel, why not come on and talk to us about it? Because, as I say, life's too short for petty grievances. Far too short.
I would agree.
Well, anyway, after the break, we're coming back. I'm talking about petty grievances. I'm going to give you all a laugh when I come back, because I'm going to be talking about our Lord Provost Kenny Duffy. Oh my goodness, Mr. Duffy has been in the press today, and what a call where Kenny's made. And I want to do the comparison. So talk about petty politics and all about it. But anyway, we'll be back after a couple of short songs. You can obviously follow us on TikTok, on YouTube and all the other social media platforms. But one last thing is we'll be on TikTok live as well, so you're more than welcome to join us. We'll see you shortly. We're back after that quick couple of songs. I don't know what happened, Davey, but it was like a 1920s song playing there. I don't know. Honestly, the technical ability of me the night is absolutely staggering. Shouldn't be allowed to be touching these buttons. But anyway, before the break, we'd highlighted that we were going to come on to change the subject matter away from the SNP group in North Lanarkshire, but you wanted to make a final point before we jump onto that?
Yeah, I just found it strange. You talk about these number of complaints and stuff that's coming through, and I would just find it absolutely incredible if there was more, or there was other ones that came through and they went the same way as this one. You know, at what point does this stop? At what point does the behaviour that is beginning to shine through?
It doesn't stop, because unfortunately the entire system.
But that then shows the individuals. It does. They show the individuals in the correct light, does it? Because you've had a 22 point
petty and personal.
I just find it incredible that.
The thing for me here is,
you think that's a route?
If there was complaints, I'd be restricted by confidentiality, but thankfully I can't discuss anything. But every complaint comes in against me, I'm going to actively talk about it on this show, because I think that, again, people need to understand what the motivations of individuals are and why they need to shut down
the motivations
discourse.
That's what I'm asking.
Why do they need to shut down anything at all in relation to this podcast in particular? Because there's been significant attempts at that. And again, from my perspective, why would you want to shut down? Okay, let's take it that we are wrong. Let's take it that we are completely wrong in relation to the information we provide. We've always stipulated this is for educational purpose. Look, it's to try and give you a better understanding of how things work politically at local government level. It's about trying to give you the idea of how decisions are being made for you or against you. These kind of things that are meant to be happening. Let's take time capsule for talk's sake, right? Time capsule. Just before, what was it, last full council, there started to be a flurry because Fulton McGregor went out there as part of the Scottish Parliament campaign. His election campaign was basically based on the shutting of the ice rink and the time capsule, made the big song and dance. It's the very same individual that went out there and made the very same big song and dance about the St Ambrose Blue Water scandal. Fulton, absolutely. I'm here and stoking up all sorts of concerns for parents, because at that time it was reported teachers were dying with various acute forms of cancer and various other stuff. Now again, I see that as highly irresponsible. Fast forward, we get to time capsule, same again. You're looking at the time capsule element, the ice rink closing. Now all of a sudden, it just so happened to fall at the same time as Fulton standing for the Scottish Parliament. There you go, time capsule. We fast forward, it's not the only community facility, as we know, in North Lanarkshire that's at potentially threat of closure. You've got the Aquatech, and again, if you look at the comparison, the SNP group in North Lanarkshire and their outrage at the time capsule being shut down to the outrage of the Aquatech, where is that outrage?
Well, I'm just going to say, because it's like,
does everything have to be
Can I put my councillor head on for 30 seconds and say that?
I wouldn't just give a general opinion. Well,
the general opinion is that they've been anonymous, haven't they? In terms of the the Aquatech situation.
Completely anonymous. David Robb and Ann Thomas showed up at the march, remember, but I don't think they showed up at any of the public meetings.
No, well, I've been to public meetings, so effectively they've never been there. And I'm still in dialogue with a number of people that's attached to the Aquatech stuff. But so why is that different for the time capsule?
Because it's not based in Coatbridge.
Well, I don't know. That might well be the case, but I don't know.
You look at where the SNP group, that tells you where the power lies within the SNP group in North Lanarkshire.
I would agree with that.
Because the position is it's got to be Coatbridge centric.
I would agree with where this core of power.
So that's it. So couple of olders do it in the wilderness. Jimmy Hepburn, that never ever really cared about North Lanarkshire Council anyway, if truth be told. So ultimately, it's just going to be what it's going to be.
Interesting.
The point being for me here is again, there was an interesting article in the Daily Record today.
It was. I actually saw that one.
Duffy.
I saw it.
I think he's been listening to this show because we've had all sorts of people.
He would be a good guest for you.
Well, do you know I'm going to invite Kenny. I know you're listening. You're always welcome on this show. You know that. You get yourself in here because I want to talk to you about the potential potential of the Labour Party becoming the Scottish Labour Party. No to join you, Kenny, I don't have any interest in joining the Labour Party, but I'm interested now that he's had such a battering at that election. You know you're going to have your challenge come the council elections, because the way other local government elections have ran, Reform has really stonked you in relation to that. So it'd be interesting to see why now, Kenny, that you want to call for a Scottish Labour Party separate for Westminster. And if it's a case that you're calling for that, who are you tipping for the leadership, Kenny? Because that'll be the biggest telltale sign where Kenny Duffy's politics is now. I find it hilarious given the fact that he believes in honesty, transparency, debate within the Labour membership and all this kind of stuff, but if you try to debate anything in that chamber, you're quickly shut down. And in addition to that as well, when was the last time he accepted a motion? My goodness, I've never seen Mr. Arbitrary wish list. How do you score that on unicorns, teals and giraffe sizes? That's how competent your motion is. My goodness. But Kenny's calling for a Scottish Labour Party. Is this
I was surprised. Surprised, but I can't say admiration, but I mean I can see why that voice would be there, because it's the what's it called, Just for Scotland movement that seems to have been set up, and Kenny's obviously looked at it and thought, okay, I'm quite happy to add my name to that. So there must be a rationale behind it. There
has to be an opportunity for Labour members, in my opinion. Now that report is coming back in September, I think it is. They're currently doing a report in relation to whether or no that should be something for consideration come the autumn conferences. But again, you're looking at it, right? Is it tokenistic? Do you think it's too late? The horse is already bolted for the stable?
No, I don't think so. I think it makes some sense on the basis that the Labour Party up in Scotland, I mean, I go a wee bit further back than you do, but you cannot imagine the political map looking the way that it does now as to what it was, say, 30 years ago, because you just looked at it and it was Labour from top to bottom, other than a couple of wee pockets of Conservatives in the southwest and around Edinburgh. And now you've got a situation where the Labour Party in Scotland are almost negligible.
Well,
I mean, it's nonsense.
Unlike many that joined the SNP after the referendum, I was in the SNP since I was very young. And the bit is I always campaigned in the SNP for being very young, and I remember the Labour councillors, I remember the Labour politicians and the dominance and the cronyism and everything else. But the hypocrisy and the sort of laugh that'll give you is, my goodness, SNP's turned into it. It's turned into that old Labour.
I just going to say, when I joined the SNP, I remember going to like Wishaw Library, and there was 5 or 6 people turned up. And
you used to be in a pub in Maryhill.
I mean, it was like
5 of them. Did you mean people
way before 2014 referendum or anything like that? And it was almost like a guerrilla group, you know, when it's set up. But you've got the situation where Labour just now are becoming less and less relevant. And Kenny has he's not a daft man, Kenny. He's maybe looked at that, as have others, and thought, we need to change, because you can't keep going the way it is. So I think Jerry's got a saying, you know, if you keep doing the same thing that you've got and expecting different results, it's a sign of madness. They have to change it.
I remember moving on to North Lanarkshire, so you're going back, how many years am I going back now, as I say, oh goodness, it must be nearly 15, 18 year, right? And I remember coming out here when I came, and it was an invitation to go to your local SNP meeting. It was in Coatbridge, right? And
education.
Oh my goodness! It must be about 18. In fact, it may be even longer than that, about 20 years. But the meeting was chaired by John Wilson, who was the MSP at the time for the SNP, and I think his wife Frances McGlinchey was a councillor. But lo and behold, the one person that was there was Alan Stubbs. Right, and I always remember there was a couple of people. There was only about 5 or 6 people at the meeting, but one of the people that was at the time of the rise of social media, everything's moved away from MySpace and Facebook, was becoming a thing. Somebody made the suggestion, why don't we have a social media? And I think John Wilson was receptive to that as the chair, and there was others. Great idea, let's do it. And only one person to shoot that down was Alan Stubbs, and you're going, very quickly you're trying to contain information, you're trying to stop that element of stuff. It was it's quite staggering.
We've spoken, I think you've spoken on this show before about the kind of dwindling support for Labour, and one of the questions that they probably need to, because we all probably know Labour supporters who are actually independent supporters now. an independence for Scotland. And it's always been the case that they've never really been able to frame it that way. They've never been given a vote on that basis. And I don't mean to polarise it into independence or not, but it's one of the things that if Labour got themselves to a position where they were seen as, or Scottish Labour was seen as more Scottish, controlled by Scotland, Labour, I think, in Scotland would do far better, and I'm absolutely certain that basically what Kenny's saying. He said you cannot go on this roundabout of continually UK Parliament Prime Ministers down there. I mean, I think, what was it, that we've now had seven Prime Ministers in 10 years? Right. I mean, you can't, that's just an absolute joke. So, when you look at Keir Starmer and you look at the stuff that's coming out there, some people are saying, it's a sad loss. Other people, the knives have obviously been sharpened and saying that. But
if you make a Scottish Labour Party, right? This is the question.
Well, you interviewed the guy. I don't know. I can't remember his name.
Brian Leishman.
There you go.
Listen, I would active. If I was a Labour member, I'd be promoting Brian Leishman as a Labour. I said Scottish Labour Party. The guy is a credible guy, very relatable, and again, great communicator. But the point being is for me, if Labour decide to become Scottish Labour, does that ultimately give them a decision and the right to the sort of democratic discourse that would no doubt take place in relation to a referendum? Are Labour members going to get that opportunity to have that vote?
Well, that's what I'm saying. You give Labour voters and you give their...
Well, it's hypothetical now, because considering the fact we think the SNP's bad, Labour's, I would say, is worse than the SNP in relation to stringent control. So, granted, there are many Labour members who make the argument, as I said, this isn't any disrespect to Labour members. I've got a lot of friends in the Labour Party.
Yeah.
But the point being is Labour, again, like any political machinery, if they don't want a debate to progress in that direction, they'll not allow the debate to progress in that direction. So is it tokenistic?
Well, this is why I think it's either brave or it's calculated.
It's tokenistic. You're not going to have that debate in relation to Scottish independence.
I don't know. Do you think? I don't know. I don't know Kenny Duffy well enough, but I wouldn't think there'd be a token suggestion in a newspaper.
If Jack McConnell or Stevie Purcell or somebody said to him, Kenny, go that direction, this is a good wee press release for you.
But go back to your point, why Kenny? So he's either...
I wouldn't say he's a prominent figure in the aspect of then again, I don't personally know, I could be completely mistaken.
No, I was going to say there might be
but I could be completely mistaken that he's prominence in relation to the Labour Party in Scotland.
It is interesting, I think, for them.
Would we back Kenny as a leader of the Scottish Labour Party?
I don't think we'll need to worry about having a say in it, to be honest, but I can see why they need to consider it. I genuinely do. I think if you're looking at it for a business context, it absolutely makes sense, because just now you're tarring yourself with a party, a UK party that's failing.
Aye.
And they've got to think, well, if we're failing up here, will we actually be any better off? Will we get better results by being not seen as part of the overall umbrella group and just a branch office up in Scotland?
Here's the next question that takes on the last point for the evening before we finish up for summer.
Summer's right.
So I think we got a couple of minutes to spare. So really, in effect, if it's a case that Andy Burnham, because I think the timeline of this is moving pretty quickly as well, obviously the Headsfield what was it, Macclesfield?
No, Meckles, is it Meckles? I always forget, doesn't matter. Andy Burnham.
Anyway, wins the by-election. Wins it with a stonking majority to take the position, and then obviously Keir Starmer resigns yesterday after saying to everybody he's going to compete in a leadership contest. Obviously done the numbers. When you looked at the MPs standing there when Andy Burnham was obviously parading in front of the steps, and they're all the way up 100 strong, right in there.
Kenny Stevenson right in the front row,
just making sure that he had a photo up. But again, Andy Burnham, is Andy Burnham the answer to unite the Labour Party in Wales and Scotland? Or is it going to be a more radical approach?
I think there's more radical, because it's a wee bit, to me, it was, and I heard it, I can't remember, it was on the radio I think at some point today, where somebody had said, but just by changing, they were putting it in football context, just by changing the manager doesn't mean to say that you're changing the team or how it plays. And you think, well, that could possibly be true, because now you're placing all this onus on Burnham coming in to be doing something totally radical, something totally different. But he's going to be faced with the same financial constraints and political constraints as any other leader that would go in there.
So what you're saying is, and to finish off this last show this season, because we've been on the go since December without a break, really.
Okay.
So, if it's a case that you're saying that he's not the Messiah, that he's just a very naughty boy, is that what you're saying for taking Keir Starmer's seat away from him?
I don't know he's a naughty boy. I mean, I think he had a grudge to settle.
That was a Life of Brian reference there.
All right, I didn't get that.
So
I've wasted your reference. Sorry, son.
We've given the end of the show anyway. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. It has been an absolute pleasure. I look forward to seeing you all again roughly in September, once we've had a good break away for this nonsense and answered a whole raft of Standards Commission complaints that will no doubt come in at the back of this evening's episode. But again, we'll put stuff up on personal social media pages, etc., to let you see. We are not trying to guide you into one decision or another. I'm sure you're clever enough to make your own mind up. But this has been What's the Point? Your favourite and only political, satirical podcast serving the good folk of the Central Belt, which just so happens to include North Lanarkshire.
Here, here.
Davey, thank you so much for
Very
joining
welcome,
me.
sir.
See you
Very
soon.
welcome.
Take care.
Can I ask you to introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Richard Sullivan and I'm the Scottish Conservative candidate for the Shettleston ward on Glasgow City Council.